You Don't Know How I Feel, and Other Stories from York Union Workhouse, 1864 to 1910. About this booklet. This booklet contains some information about York Union Workhouse and 13 stories about disabled people and disability between 1864 and 1910. The booklet goes with a reclaimed medical doctor's bag containing a selection of objects. These objects are loosely related to each of the stories. We invite you to handle and explore each of the objects whilst reading or listening to the stories. York Union Workhouse. York Union Workhouse on Huntington Road was built in 1848 to support people who were unable to, for a range of reasons, provide for or look after themselves. The Poor Law Amendment Act of 1834 had seen a boom in workhouse development across the United Kingdom as a growing concern and response to poverty, destitution, and, as was argued by some, a social immorality. The workhouse segregated its female, male, young and disabled inmates within its many special yards and wards to prevent further contamination. Inmates were required to follow strict rules and often had to do task work like picking oakum for rope making or smashing stones into gravel. In earshot of both industrialisation and eugenics, inmates were offered food and shelter, yet judged for doing so. Originally built to house 300 people, in 1881, York Union Workhouse housed 717 inmates. Later, the workhouse became St Mary's Hospital, then a care home, and today is accommodation for the students of York St John University. Disabled people in the workhouse. Disabled people were highly visible in the workhouse, and yet their histories are often hidden and have not been well explored. Disabled people are certainly present and can be seen in the range of administrative and other records associated with the workhouse. This includes those relating to outdoor relief and that of the medical officer, as well as in the census records. Indeed, column 11 in the enumeration book for the 1891 census gives the option to note the person as either 1. Deaf and dumb, 2. Blind, 3. Lunatic, imbecile or idiot. Other terms used for those with a learning difficulty might have been weak-minded or feeble-minded, but these terms were not clear and used very differently. Alongside developments in the workhouse, a range of legislation emerged that began to define and shape perceptions of disability and leaves a particularly negative legacy for disabled people today. The Lunatic Act of 1845 compelled local authorities to build lunatic asylums. By 1859, of the 36,000 people classed as lunatics in England, all but about 7,000 were in workhouses and a similar number with friends or elsewhere. The Lunacy Acts, 1890 to 1922, referred to lunatics, but the Mental Treatment Act, 1930, changed the legal term to person of unsound mind, an expression which was replaced under the Mental Health Act of 1959 by mental illness. Additionally, the Idiots Act of 1886 was intended to give facilities for the care, education and training of idiots and imbeciles. It made a distinction between lunatics, idiots and imbeciles for the purpose of making entry into education establishments easier and for defining the ways they were cared for. The Mental Deficiency Act of 1913 was the first piece of legislation to provide definitions for these terms. Idiots, that is to say, persons so deeply defective in mind from birth or from an early age as to be unable to guard themselves against common physical dangers. Imbeciles, that is to say, persons in those whose case there exists from birth or from an early age mental defectiveness, not amounting to idiocy, yet so pronounced that they are incapable of managing themselves or their affairs, or, in the case of children, of being taught to do so. You Don't Know How I Feel, and Other Stories from York Union Workhouse, 1864 to 1910. The following 13 stories are taken from newspaper and archive records relating to the workhouse from Explore York Libraries and Archive. They share and explore some small insights about disabled people at York Union Workhouse between 1864 and 1910. The Nurse of Naughtiness. In the Yorkshire Gazette on February 20th, 1864, a story of shockingly ungrateful vagabondism is told. Mr. Hodgson from the workhouse admitted 6 destitute men, afflicted with the usual parasitical peculiarities of vagrancy and filth, and placed them in the foul ward, believing that idleness is the nurse of naughtiness, of melancholy and other diseases. The Board of Guardians orders the men to be breaking stones to make gravel, a practice typically involving smashing larger rocks into tiny pieces to be fitted through a small grate. The men refuse. For 2 or 3 days, kind persuasion was tried by a Mr. Wilson from the workhouse, but they still refuse. So, Mr. Wilson deprives them of their dinners. This was a signal for open revolt, and the men commenced rioting, barricading the yard door, wrenched the iron stanchions, set about breaking the windows of the rooms surrounding the yard, as well as threatening to set fire to the workhouse to make their escape. Mr. Wilson called for the police, who quickly came and then, when gaining access to the ward, arrested the 6 men, took them to court and gave them several weeks in prison. The judges were of the opinion that the offence was of a nature that ought to be visited with great severity. Totally uneatable. In the York Herald, February 28, 1880, a complaint from Aaron Wilkinson, an inmate of the workhouse, is discussed. Aaron stated that, ever since Mr. Wales had held the reins of office at workhouse master, there had been a marked alteration in the diet of inmates. They only got about half of their proper quantity, and the quality was of a wretched description. For the past few weeks it had been unbearable, and he had been compelled to leave it. Reviewing the complaint, the Board of Guardians respond. Wilkinson was a painter by trade, 41 years of age, but for whose intemperate habits they believed he would be able to earn his own livelihood, and that they state of the food no change whatever had taken place, but suggest the complaint was motivated due to Wilkinson having his privilege of going out curtailed. Mr. Ernest, one of the guardians, said, "It was a great pity if there was no way by which a man acting in the way Wilkinson had done could be punished for his insolence and for the constant discontent which he had manifested, making the whole workhouse uncomfortable." Useful influence. An important 2 days conference of representatives from the poor law unions in Yorkshire was held in York on the 13th of December 1881, the Bradford Daily Telegraph reported. The chairman expressed the view that conferences of this character should be arranged on a permanent basis, and that, if this were done, they would exercise a useful influence in obtaining uniformity in the administration of the poor law. Other subjects considered were the treatment of lunatics, introduced by Mr. S. W. North, Medical Officer, York, and Visiting Medical Officer, Friends Retreat, York, and vagrants, introduced by Mr. Hall, Clerk to the Huddersfield Union. Did not care to return. Reported in the Yorkshire Herald, Friday, June the 23rd, 1882, Mr. Cobb charges Jane Curtin for having run away from the York Union Workhouse with clothing worth 1 guinea. Mr. Leeming, the prosecutor, said Jane had leave given for 1 day's outing, but, by her own confession, had got too much drink, and had remaining out during the night, did not care to return. Jane then went to Seamer, near Scarborough, and got a job as a nurse, where she was later apprehended. Because she had been in trouble before, she was sent to Castle Prison for 6 weeks. Shush, snip, rip. In the newspaper, the Yorkshire Herald, on Friday the 24th of November 1899, a meeting of the York Board of Guardians is reported. The Guardians discuss comments made by the inspectors of the local government board respecting the treatment of imbeciles in the workhouse. York Union Workhouse is accused of forcibly cutting the hair of female inmates short and making them wear dresses made of tough, rip-resistant material. The inspectors also state that when asking a male inmate, a Charles Hudson, for feedback, he appeared frightened and wouldn't answer. The Guardians dismiss the complaints and state that they keep female imbeciles' hair cut short for cleanliness, that they furnish these women with those dresses to prevent them being ripped up, and that Charles will always answer to them. Existed in large numbers. Reported in the Sheffield Daily Telegraph, Friday, December the 22nd, 1899, the chairman of the York Board of Guardians said, "It was a serious statement to go forth to the public." Mr. Kennedy, a local government board inspector, said they had existed in large numbers. The chairman said he was sure that York authorities did as much as any other union asked to keep the place clean, and asked, "Have you seen them?" Mr. Kennedy said he only spoke of what he had been told about the presence of bugs in the sick and lunacy wards. Neat and tidy. Attendants shall take such of the imbecile patients as are able for a walk when authorised by the medical officer, and shall see that they are neat and tidy in appearance. From the Rules for the Officers of the Workhouse, March 1900. Unless the restraint is necessary. Some important restrictions have been placed by the recent Act on the use of mechanical means of restraint on lunatics. It is directed by Section 40 that mechanical means of bodily restraint shall not be applied to any lunatic unless the restraint is necessary for purposes of surgical or medical treatment, or to prevent the lunatic from injuring himself or others, and in every case where such restraint is applied, a medical certificate must, as soon as it can be obtained, be signed, describing the mechanical means used and stating the grounds upon which the certificate is founded. From Duties of Union Officers under the Lunacy Act, 1890, page 63, under the heading of Mechanical Means of Restraint. He will be guilty. It is expressly provided by the new Act that if any officer, nurse, attendant, or other person employed in any workhouse carnally knows or attempts to have carnal knowledge of any female under care of treatment as a lunatic in the workhouse, he will be guilty of a misdemeanour and, on conviction, will be liable to be imprisoned with or without hard labour for a term not exceeding 2 years. No consent or alleged consent of such female will be any defence to an indictment or prosecution for such offence. From Duties of Union Officers under the Lunacy Act, 1890, page 64, under the heading of Abuse of Female Lunatic. You don't know how I feel. Reported under a heading of A York Workhouse Sensation in the Yorkshire Gazette, Saturday, April the 27th, 1901, is the suicide of a tramp named John Desmond. Nurse Hannah Mayhew said, "No one could have been more surprised at the discovery than me." John Desmond, an army veteran of 12 years, had told the nurse, "You don't know how I feel," just before crawling through a window which was open only 12 inches and fell onto the hard gravel from a height of 15 feet, being killed instantly. Mr. Shan, a doctor, said that the depression due to the man's condition might have affected his mind, particularly if there was any hereditary tendency to insanity. Mystery Knife. Reported in the Driffield Times, September the 13th, 1902, Joseph Shaw, aged 30 years, committed suicide in a determined manner in the York Union Workhouse on Saturday morning. He was an inmate on the lunatic ward, and whilst the attendant was engaged with another patient, he left the ward, went into the closet, cut his throat, and then leapt out of a window, falling a distance of 16 feet. How he obtained the knife with which he cut his throat is a mystery. Accelerated by an accident. In the Yorkshire Evening Press, Monday, April the 10th, 1905, Mary Sarah Jackson, aged 82, is reported as having died some 5 days earlier at York Union Workhouse. Mary had lived with Annie Shaw of Townend Street for 12 years before being removed to the workhouse on account of being too eccentric to be controlled. On 27th of March, Mary Alice Sainer, attendant in the female special ward, said that Mary was standing by the fire when she ordered her to go to the table, where she tripped on the cocoa matting that was worn into a hole. Mary was taken to her bed. She died several days later. Other patients had nearly fallen on the matting on previous occasions, and the necessity for new matting had been reported. A verdict of death by senile decay accelerated by an accident was returned by the jury, who also added there was some neglect on the part of the workhouse master for not replacing the matting. Martha Bongs, Maniac. The Yorkshire Evening Press, Friday, November the 10th, 1905, reported a most enjoyable entertainment was given to inmates of the York Union Workhouse. This included a waxwork exhibition with the Chinese giant, Mrs. Winslow, an infant, Captain Kidd and his victim, Martha Bongs, Maniac, the celebrated Welsh dwarf, Signorina Squalin, vocalist, Jack Sprat, Mrs. Jack Sprat, the Giggler, Little Red Riding Hood, the Fair One with Golden Locks, Bo Peep, John and Peter, Porters and Winder-Up, and Little Nell, Duster of Figures. Through the Butcher's Window. Reported in the Sheffield Daily Telegraph, Tuesday, February the 1st, 1910, Jeremiah Jacks, 62, former inmate of York Union Workhouse, was charged with maliciously breaking 2 plate glass windows of the shop William Wright, butcher and guardian at York Union Workhouse. William had been part of the workhouse committee who inquired into an act of insubordination in which Jeremiah was found guilty and evicted from the workhouse. List of female inmates in 1891 census with terms idiot, imbecile. 1. Armstrong, Mary, age 18, idiot from childhood. 2. Bailey, Sarah, age 28, imbecile. 3. Barlow, Sarah Jane, 57, imbecile. 4. Barnes, Harriet, age 42, idiot from childhood. 5. Beale, Elizabeth, age 59, imbecile. 6. Beale, Mary Jane, age 36, imbecile. 7. Bell, Jane Margaret, age 27, imbecile. 8. Bell, May, age 44, imbecile. 9. Boyne, Kath, age 39, imbecile/deformed. 10. Barlow, Elizabeth, age 30, imbecile. 11. Castley, Jane, age 67, imbecile. 12. Chapman, Harriet, age 32, imbecile. 13. Clundell, Elizabeth, age 44, imbecile. 14. Cobb, Margaret, age 48, imbecile. Conway, Mary, age 20, imbecile from childhood. 16. Cook, Margaret, age 44, imbecile. 17. Dale, Marion, age 42, imbecile/deaf and dumb. 18. Dale, Sarah, age 26, deaf and blind. 19. Doyle, Elizabeth, age 52, imbecile. 20. Eyre, Elizabeth Ann, age 20, imbecile. 21. Farrer, Emma, age 36, imbecile. 22. Firth, Emily, age 34, imbecile. 23. Gastrell, Louisa, age 28, imbecile. 24. Goldsborough, Alice, age 36, imbecile. 25. Goodyear, Anne, age 42, imbecile. 26. Gunn, Harriet, age 48, imbecile. 27. Heskley, Margaret, age 36, idiot from child. 28. Jordan, Jane, age 5, imbecile from child. 29. Landreth, Fanny, age 41, idiot from child. 30. Lofthouse, Charlotte, age 11, imbecile from child. 31. Lavella, Bridget, age 67, imbecile. 32. Moorthorpe, Jane, age 80, imbecile. 33. Moorthorpe, Mary, age 48, imbecile. 34. Mistor, Jane, age 24, imbecile from child. 35. Morris, Anne, age 58, imbecile. 36. Neville, Anne Mary, age 26, imbecile. 37. Poskill, Eliza, age 15, imbecile. 38. Sanlow, Mary, age 24, idiot from child. 39. Sale, Sarah, age 31, imbecile from birth. 40. Smith, Charlotte, age 58, imbecile. 41. Sywell, Ellen, age 36, imbecile. 42. Warrington, Mary Ann, age 34, imbecile. 43. Webster, Margaret, age 57, imbecile. 44. Whitfield, Bertha, age 60, imbecile.